Okay, we're in the van. We're in a little different position than usual. Usually I'm back there in the jump seat. But today I'm up here because, well, this is where I drive the van. But while I was driving the other day, I noticed that this particular light came on. I'll show it to you here. There it is there. The brake light. Not the oil light. The brake light. And normally I'm going to release the parking brake. So normally that light goes out as it's doing now. But when I drive the van for any period of time, that light will come on. It hasn't been coming on all the year and a half I've driven the van. So when you look at the Google this and say, you know, the brake light on, what's the cause? People say, oh, it's could be low brake fluid. And so then the question becomes, why is the brake fluid low? This is a sealed system. Unless there's a leak, there wouldn't be low brake fluid. Unless something within the sealed system has caused the level of the brake fluid to go down. What would that be? What that would be is wear on the different friction surfaces, the disc brake pads and the rear brake shoes. So they have a lining on them that's a certain amount of thickness. As that gets used up by applying the brakes over and over again over thousands of miles, that surface gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, something has to take up the space that's left when the pads wear out. What takes up the space? The hydraulic fluid in the brake system is what takes up the space. That's what it's there for, is to fill the space so that when you press the pedal, there's no space. And you press the pedal and it applies the brakes. So that's why you have a reservoir in the brake fluid or in the brake system. The reservoir is there to mitigate the difference between pads that are worn out, leaving enough fluid in the system so that it takes up all the space and there's still a little left over, to a maximum level. When the pads are new, the level of the brake fluid is up near the maximum, and because the pads are taking up the space that in time the fluid will be taking up. I hope that makes sense. You know, I know these things, and I try and state them in a clear, simple way so that you don't have to, you know, take a tech class to learn about this stuff. But essentially that's what's happening, is the fluid level is going down because it's having to take up space that was formerly occupied by the thickness of the friction surface, the brake pad, or the brake shoe in the case of the back brakes. I hope that's clear. So now we're talking about this light. Why does the light come on? Well, it can come on for a variety of reasons. Probably the most likely is that the fluid level has dropped, in making the sensor inside of the reservoir detect a low brake fluid level, and so the light comes on to let you know the brake fluid's low. The important question to answer is why? And that's what we've done here. So we've said the brake fluid level is low because the pads are worn out. So we're going to get, obviously, new brake pads, and that should take care of the light being on. But I noticed that the front brakes were getting very hot. At one point, they were noticeably dragging and really slowing the vehicle down. It was very noticeable, and that leads me to believe that there's a problem with the disc calipers. That's the mechanical thing that squeezes the disc pads against the rotor that's spinning around, squeezes those pads to slow the van down. So if that caliper can't release because of corrosion, age, it's just misaligned, it's worn out, then the pads will stay touching the rotor until the heat expands and pushes them back away. And if you drive long enough, then the whole system will cool down a little bit, but it's always dragging. That means it's always creating friction. That means it's lowering your gas mileage, for one thing, making the engine work harder, and just generally heating up the brakes to a point that isn't good for them. So they're not supposed to just sit there run hot all the time. They're supposed to heat up when you apply the brakes and then cool down while you're just driving along, and they shouldn't be rubbing against the brake rotor, because that's just not how they're supposed to operate. Everything's supposed to be freewheeling and spin freely, and if it's not, it's a problem. So my feeling is I'm going to take 2 steps back. I'm going to change the disc pads, and I'm going to install new calipers. In this case, they're remanufactured, but essentially it's a casting, and the parts inside are all renewed, so they're new. The old casting really doesn't make a difference. It gets lubricated with brake grease so that things slide back and forth and run smoothly. And you can reuse a casting as long as you use the new seals and internal parts. Renew those, everything should be fine. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm heading over to the auto parts store to pick up those parts, and then we'll get into the actual removal of the wheels, jacking the car up, taking the parts off, and replacing with new parts. So stay tuned for that part. But at least this, I hope this helps people who may have a similar situation with a light coming on, to not just think, oh yeah, it just needs fluid. No. You have to determine why the fluid level has dropped. That's the critical thing. And adding fluid may turn the light out, but you may have other problems that continue that could cause you safety issues, or just more expense as time goes on. So the fact that fluid is low is nice to know, but why it's low is really the most important thing to find out. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, stay tuned for that disassembly, reassembly video and new parts installation, and comment as you see fit. Thanks for watching.